7 signs an avoidant X is getting ready to reconnect. Let me ask you a question right now. Have you ever been stuck in the pain of not knowing where you stand with someone who once meant everything to you? Maybe they walked away. Maybe they pulled back. Maybe they didn't even say goodbye. And you're left wondering, do they still care? Will they come back? Is any of it even real? Now listen closely. Avoidants don't let people in easily. And when they pull away, it's not always about you. It's about fear. It's about vulnerability. And it's about their wiring. But here's the good news. Avoidants can come back, and when they do, they drop clues. Your job to spot those signs before they fade. So here we go. These are the 7 signs your avoidant X might be getting ready to reconnect. And trust me, if you see even 3, the tide is turning. It's a powerful truth you need to hold on to right now. Presence speaks louder than promises. Especially with an avoidant X, you won't always get a clear, I miss you, or I want to come back. That's not how they're wired. What you'll get instead, if you're paying attention, is a shift in presence, a quiet but deliberate return into your orbit. And if you're not emotionally grounded, you might overlook it or dismiss it as coincidence. But it's not. You see, avoidants are deeply protective of their emotional space. When they disconnect, it's often because they're overwhelmed, not just with the relationship, but with themselves. Emotional intimacy is heavy for them. It's unfamiliar terrain. So when they back off, it's a defense mechanism, not always a judgment of your worth or of the connection you had. That's why when they start to reemerge, they don't do it with fanfare. They do it with small presence. It might start with them watching your stories on social media. Not once consistently. They're not ready to say hi, but they're ready to know how you're doing. They want to see if you're okay, if you've moved on, if you're still the person they left behind or someone new entirely. This isn't stalking. This is their way of tiptoeing back into emotional proximity without the risk of being seen, hurt, or rejected. It's their way of being around you without fully being with you. Now, someone who doesn't understand avoidant attachment might say if they cared, they'd just reach out. That's a fair point for someone secure. But avoidants move differently. For them, watching you is a safer first step than contacting you. It lets them process how they feel. It gives them space to test their own readiness. They're not checking your story just for fun. They're watching to see how it makes them feel. Are they jealous, sad, regretful, still detached? They're gathering internal data, and every silent view is a breadcrumb. They might not like or comment at first, but then maybe suddenly they do. Maybe they heart an old photo. Maybe they reply to a story with an emoji. It's subtle, almost laughably small. But for an avoidant, that is huge. That is vulnerability in its rawest form. Because what they're saying is, I see you. I'm still watching. I'm trying to figure this out. And that right there, that consistent, quiet, nonverbal presence is often the first real sign that they're turning the emotional ship around. Because if they were truly done, if they had completely let go, they wouldn't be watching. They wouldn't be lingering. Avoidants don't hover without a reason. Their presence is permissionless, but purposeful. The thing is, many people get frustrated at this stage. They want the grand gesture, the full-on text or call, the I made a mistake speech. But if you push for that too soon, you might scare them right back into retreat, because when they do come back, it needs to be their choice, not a demand. And that quiet watching phase, that's their incubation period. That's where they're testing not only their feelings for you, but their capacity to show up differently. And here's the part most people miss. Your energy during this time matters just as much as theirs. If you're posting inauthentically, trying to make them jealous or chasing their attention, you're disrupting the natural rhythm of their return. But if you stay grounded, if you continue living, growing, and becoming, you give them a clear, powerful signal. I am not waiting, but I'm evolving. And that can be the most magnetic presence of all. So when your avoidant X starts hovering, starts appearing without announcing, starts reinserting themselves quietly into your world, don't ignore it and don't overreact. Just recognize what it is. Presence before words, a silent offering, a testing of the emotional temperature. And for them, that's the first real sign of reconnection, because before they can open their mouth, they have to open their mind, and their heart follows second. That's the game. That's the rhythm. And if you can see it clearly, you'll never miss the signs again. You've probably heard it before. They asked about you, maybe from a friend, maybe from someone you didn't expect. And your heart skips a beat, right? Because even when you've been trying to move on, trying to stay strong, that one sentence shakes the ground beneath you. Why? Because it means you're not forgotten. It means that in the chaos of whatever they're going through, you're still echoing in their mind. And that matters. When avoidant X starts mentioning you, even subtly, even in passing, it's never casual. It's never without weight. Because for someone who's built emotional walls as high as mountains, speaking your name again is a kind of emotional rebellion against the distance they created. It's their unconscious beginning to override the protective mechanism they've relied on for so long. See, avoidants don't tend to dwell out loud. They internalize, they analyze, they compartmentalize. When the relationship ended, they might have acted cold, detached, as if they just moved on. That's the exterior they wear, like armor. But underneath, there's a storm, because the connection did affect them. The loss did matter. And at some point, the silence starts to break, quietly, softly, through small cracks in their conversations. That's why when you hear that your name has come up, don't brush it off. Don't minimize it. That's a signal. They're reaching out without reaching out, testing the air to see how it feels to speak your name again, not to you, not yet, but to the world around them, to mutual friends, to people they trust. It's their way of pulling the past into the present without fully confronting it. And most of the time, they don't even realize they're doing it. Maybe they ask, how's she doing these days? Or is he still living in the same place? It might sound harmless, but it's packed with emotion. Because what they're really asking is, have they moved on? Do they still think about me? Would I still have a chance? These aren't random words. They're emotional signals, probes, subtle invitations for more information, and maybe even a little hope. Sometimes it's even more indirect. Maybe they bring up a memory. Remember that trip we all took? Or that used to be their favorite song. These moments aren't nostalgia for its own sake. They're breadcrumbs, signs that they're mentally revisiting the space you once occupied in their life. And if they're doing that, they're not over it, they're circling back, even if they don't know where the road will lead. But here's what you need to understand, and this is critical. Avoidants don't open up in one big wave. They move in fragments. A word here, a name there. If you're waiting for a big emotional declaration, you might miss the signs they're already giving you. Because to them, saying your name is already a risk. It's already vulnerable. It's already a toe dipped back into the emotional current they tried so hard to escape. And it's not just about what they say. It's about who they say it to. If they're asking someone close to you, someone they know will probably tell you. That's not an accident. That's calculated vulnerability. That's them trying to get a message to you without directly facing the fear of your reaction. Because let's be real, avoidants fear rejection as deeply as anyone else. They just hide it better. And speaking about you through someone else gives them a layer of emotional safety. But I don't confuse this with manipulation. In most cases, it's not about control, it's about fear. Fear of doing it wrong, fear of being too late, fear that you've outgrown them. So when they mention you, when they bring you up, when they insert you into the present conversation, it's because they haven't let go. It's because they're wondering if the door is still cracked. Open, even a little. And you have a choice when you hear about it. You don't have to jump in. You don't have to respond, but you can take it as evidence, real living proof that you were never as forgotten as you feared, that the connection still lives in them, even if it's buried beneath layers of self-protection. So the next time someone tells you, hey, your ex was talking about you, take a breath and let that moment sink in, because that isn't just small talk. That's movement, that's hesitation giving way to curiosity, that's silence starting to break. And for someone with an avoidant attachment style, that's where the reconnection begins. It always starts with something small, a message out of nowhere, a ping on your phone that catches you off guard. Maybe it's late at night, maybe it's a random Tuesday, and the message reads, hey, do you still have my charger? Or what was the name of that Italian place we went to? Innocent, right? On the surface, sure, but let's not pretend it doesn't hit you differently, because deep down, you know, this isn't really about the charger. This isn't about the restaurant. This is a door being pushed open, just a crack. When an avoidant X reaches out with a seemingly meaningless question, it's almost never about the content of the message. It's about the contact. It's a signal masked in neutrality. You see, avoidants don't lead with vulnerability. They don't come forward with, I miss you not right away. That would mean facing emotions head on. And for them, that's like stepping into fire barefoot. So what do instead? They test the water. They send out small, safe feelers that give them two things at once, a reason to talk to you. And protection from rejection if you don't respond. They want to know, are you open? Are you still angry? Have you shut the door for good? And they don't want to ask that directly because they're afraid of the answer. So they wrap it up in casual conversation. They pretend it's about something logistical, something random, something forgettable. But don't be fooled. These small messages carry huge emotional weight. And the timing, that matters too. They don't just reach out at random. Often, these messages come after a period of silence, after they've had time to reflect, after their initial relief from the breakup wears off and reality starts to creep in. They've sat in the silence long enough to feel it, long enough to start missing the connection they once pushed away. And now, rather than walk right back into the fire, they throw out a small spark, a question, a comment, a callback to see if the bridge still exists. And here's what makes it even more layered. Half the time, they don't even consciously realize they're doing it. The avoidant mind is a master of self-protection. They may genuinely believe they're just asking a question, but that doesn't make the intention behind it any less real, because intention lives beneath the surface. And when someone you haven't heard from in weeks or months suddenly decides they need to ask about a sweater or a song or a random piece of your shared past, that's not logistics, that's longing in disguise. Now, how you respond, that's up to you. But what's important is that you see it for what it is a breadcrumb, and breadcrumbs always lead somewhere. Maybe they're testing to see if you'll reply with warmth. Maybe they're hoping you'll pick up the thread and turn it into a conversation. Or maybe they're just trying to ease their own guilt by proving to themselves that you don't hate them. Whatever the reason, the fact remains they reached out. That's movement. That's a shift. And for someone with avoidant tendencies who usually shuts down, pulls away, and disappears to process emotions on their own, that message is a big deal. That's vulnerability on their terms. But don't mistake the softness of a message for a lack of meaning. It's not about how poetic or romantic it sounds. In fact, with avoidance, it usually won't. It will be plain, maybe even awkward. But behind the mundane tone is a question screaming to be heard. Can I come closer again? Is it safe? Do I still have a place in your world? You're trying to reconnect without admitting they're trying to reconnect. They're walking the edges of your life again, hoping you'll notice, hoping you'll engage, hoping you'll give them a way in without calling them out. And if you respond kindly, calmly, with boundaries, but without anger, you create a space where they feel a little less afraid to keep going. You signal that they can move one step closer, that the conversation isn't over. That maybe, just maybe, reconnection is still possible if they're willing to keep showing up. So when that message comes through, no matter how small, no matter how random, pause before you dismiss it. Look beyond the words. Feel the intention. And remember, for an avoidant, even a one-line message can be a silent scream for contact, a risk, a reach, a hope that maybe this time they won't have to run. It's a pattern that can be easy to miss if you're not paying close attention. But when an avoidant X starts to show emotional openness in other areas of their life, something is shifting. It's as if they've been living in a shell, protecting themselves from the vulnerability of deeper connections. But now, slowly, the shell begins to crack, and it's not just with you. They're talking more openly about their feelings in general, whether with friends, family, or even in therapy. This is a sign that they're doing the inner work they've long resisted. Avoidants are notorious for keeping their emotions at arm's length, for bottling things up, for hiding from the emotional mess of relationships. But just because they avoid it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's all there, tucked beneath the surface. But it's not until they start to face their own fears that they become ready to deal with the very feelings they once ran from. So when you start to hear that they're more open emotionally in other contexts, you need to recognize it for what it is, an internal transformation. This isn't something that happens overnight. Avoidants don't open up easily, and they don't let others see their vulnerabilities without significant internal conflict. That's why when they begin to talk more openly about their struggles, their fears, or their past in a way that they haven't before, it's a powerful signal that they are changing, they are growing. It's not always direct either. It might start small, a casual conversation about how they've been feeling, or something they've been working on in therapy. Perhaps they share a personal experience that gives you a glimpse into how they're confronting their emotions, or they mention something about their past they've never talked about before. At first, you might brush it off as just another passing comment, but these things are meaningful. These moments reveal a willingness to dive deeper into their own emotional landscape, something they've likely avoided for a long time. For someone who's avoided vulnerability as a survival mechanism, this is huge. It's a breakthrough. They're starting to let go of the armor they've worn for so long, and this is often the first sign of real change in an avoidant person, not when they reach out directly to you, but when they start to embrace the work of emotional growth, even in small ways. And it's not just about therapy or self-help books. It's about their willingness to face their own feelings, feelings, to admit that they need help, to acknowledge that they can't keep running forever. When an avoidant begins to open up, it means they're no longer stuck in a loop of denial. They're looking at themselves in a new way, trying to understand the forces that shape their fear of intimacy and taking the necessary steps to change. It's a process of emotional growth, and if you've been paying attention, you can see that it's happening in real time. But here's the thing, they're not necessarily going to tell you about this growth, at least not right away. Avoidants don't always make grand announcements. They're not going to sit down and say, I'm changing and I want to come back. That's not their style. But you might start noticing little shifts. Maybe they're sharing more with their friends about how they've been working through their feelings. Maybe they're opening up about things they've been avoiding for years. Maybe they're talking about their emotional growth in a way that shows they're ready to start breaking down their walls. And if you're still in their life, even from a distance, you might see the effects of this emotional transformation. They're more self-aware. They begin to address their fears, their attachment issues, their patterns of avoiding intimacy. They begin to realize that in order to be truly happy and in order to have meaningful connections, they have to face their deepest fears. And sometimes that means addressing the wounds that caused them to shut down in the first place. It's not a quick or easy process, but it's a powerful one. And if you're paying attention to the subtle signs, you'll see that emotional growth is happening. You'll see that they're changing. And here's the most important part. When an avoidant person starts to address their own emotional challenges, it creates the possibility for deeper, more authentic connections. Not just with you, but with the world around them. They're learning to let people in, to be more vulnerable, to share their true selves. And when they've made real progress in this area, when they've truly begun to embrace emotional openness, that's when the possibility of reconnection becomes real. It's not just about them returning to you, it's about them becoming someone who is capable of giving and receiving love in a way that's healthy, authentic, and true. And if that's something you're ready to receive, the foundation for a new relationship begins to form. It's not about fixing the past. It's about building a future with someone who has done the work to become more whole, more real, and more capable of true connection. And that's where the real magic begins. Sometimes the most profound change begins not with grand gestures or emotional declarations, but with a simple shift in behavior. When your avoidant ex starts showing up in ways they never did before, that's a real signal. It's not just about physical presence, it's about showing up in their actions and their energy and how they choose to interact with you and the world around them. When they make an effort, even in small ways, to re-enter your life or become more present, you can feel it. It's different. Something has shifted. The distance is closing. An avoidant person who once distanced themselves, withdrew, or emotionally shut down will start to demonstrate a change in how they show up. And it's often you who will notice it first. Maybe they show up at a social event where you'll be present, despite the fact that in the past they would have avoided that interaction altogether. Maybe they start texting more frequently, or they ask about your well-being without the casual detachment they once used, or perhaps they start taking more initiative, whether it's arranging plans, making more effort in conversations, or expressing a desire to stay in touch. This shift, this effort, is often their way of testing the waters. It's them trying to understand if the emotional gap between you both can be bridged. They are no longer taking your connection for granted or assuming they can run from it indefinitely. They're choosing to come closer, and that's a monumental step for someone with an avoidant attachment style. For them, it's easy to protect themselves by creating distance, hiding behind walls, and believing they're fine on their own. But when they choose to show up, when they actively seek you out or put themselves in a position to be present, it speaks volumes. This can manifest in a variety of ways, and it's not always perfect. It's messy. Sometimes an avoidant will still struggle with full emotional transparency, but their behavior, the consistent, deliberate presence, is the key. Maybe they'll show up in the ways you need, or perhaps they'll still hesitate in moments that require deep emotional openness. But the willingness to even try is where the transformation happens. And here's what you need to understand. It's not about perfection. The effort itself is significant because it shows a deep internal shift. They've likely realized that the distance, the walls, and the avoidance were holding them back, not just from you, but from their own emotional growth. The more they show up, the more they reveal that they're ready to overcome the patterns they once relied on to protect themselves. You might even notice this in how they engage with other aspects of their life. They might be making more time for things they previously ignored or pushed away. Maybe they've started addressing other important relationships, like with friends, family, or colleagues, in a more meaningful, intentional way. The emotional walls that once kept them isolated are starting to crumble. They are beginning to lean in, to reach out, to make an effort. And it's not just for you, it's for themselves. This shift can also be subtle. You might see it in how they talk about the future. Perhaps they mention plans or possibilities in a way they never did before. Maybe they start discussing things in terms of we instead of me. where they reference how they're working on themselves, showing an awareness that change is necessary and that they're taking steps toward growth. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this behavior represents vulnerability. It's the emotional equivalent of stepping into unknown waters. Every small action they take to be present is a sign of progress, a sign that they're starting to believe they can exist in relationships without completely retreating. They're starting to see that they can show up without losing themselves, that they don't have to guard their heart at all costs to protect their sense of safety. And this effort, it's important. It's them taking risks. It's them leaning into discomfort and choosing connection over isolation. And for someone who's lived so long with a fear of intimacy and rejection, that's not something that happens on a whim. It takes courage, and it means they're ready to engage in a way that's more open, more willing, more connected. So when you notice them making this effort, no matter how small or tentative, don't dismiss it. This isn't just a casual move. This is them showing you that they're ready to be more present, ready to be more vulnerable, ready to rebuild. And whether or not it leads to full reconciliation is still up to both of you, but recognize that this shift is one of the most powerful signs that they're willing to face their fears, let go of their defenses, and open the door to something new. As we reflect on the signs that an avoidant ex is ready to reconnect, remember that these moments are more than just gestures. They are steps toward growth, vulnerability, and a new beginning. Whether through subtle actions, emotional openness, or the courage to show up, these are the signals of change, the signs that they are no longer running. So trust the process, stay grounded in your own worth, and remember that the door to reconnection can only open when both sides are willing to face the past and step into the future. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the clarity and courage to embrace whatever comes next. Take care and goodbye.